Hello and welcome back to my channel where I give you my 2 cents on all things TV and film and more. And this is my forever deep dive. So, Forever is Netflix's teen slash young adult drama, and it is based off of the Judy Blume book by the same name. And if for some reason you still have not yet seen it, this is the spoiler free portion of the video. I don't have much or any negative things to say about this show. It is fantastic. It follows our two main characters, Keisha and Justin, as they learn and experience all of the first when it comes to romantic relationships. They are entering into their final year of high school, so we see their journey through all of that. And the cast is stacked. The writing is fantastic. The directing is fantastic. It looks amazing. The world actually feels lived in, which is a weird thing to say. But it's something that we need to say in this era of television. Like, you look at their bedrooms, you look at the homes that they live in, and it actually looks like people live there. And it doesn't just look like things are placed neatly, like a human being doesn't exist in this space. And one of the other things that is like a huge highlight on the show is the music. It is so well thought out and so perfect, and I just love when television shows choose music for scenes where it's like the lyrics of the song is saying what the characters are thinking or what they want to say but can't say, or can't say in the words that the song uses, or it's talking about things that they want, like reading between the lines type things. I love when television shows do that, and this show does a fantastic job of doing that. Yeah, all around, it is a really good show. I do want to say that I do recognize that there are some people who strongly dislike when a story that originally was about white characters is adapted with black characters or an all black cast like this show is. But I'm just here to say that you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Mara Brock Akil is behind this show, and if you don't know anything about her, you do if you've seen shows like Girlfriends and The Game and Being Mary Jane and Love Is and the Jamie Foxx show and Moesha, and like there's more to that list. So if you've seen and loved any of those shows, I am 100% certain that you would probably enjoy this show as well. So, those are all of my non spoiler thoughts and my encouragement to all the people who have not yet watched to give this a chance. And now let's move into just basically me going through the list of things that first that I loved that this show did, and that I just need to get out of my brain and out to the people to have a discussion about. So let's go. Okay, so the first thing that I want to mention is that with this show, you can really tell the difference between when black people are telling black stories and when non black people are telling black stories. The first way is just how not just our main characters, but pretty much everyone is portrayed on this show. Um, it lacks the traditional stereotypes that we are used to. It shows that we are not a monolith. When we see Keisha, even in the situation that she's in with the sex tape, she is not called fast. People do not treat her like you would treat a fast girl. There's a lot of care taken with her in this whole situation, and that is highly appreciated. And even with Justin, like all of the stereotypes that you may be thinking of that people like to put on black men and black young men are void with him, and I really appreciate that. And I think the second major thing that I want to mention about this is the incident with the police. So, as someone who has watched like a bunch of television, especially post summer of 2020, a lot of television shows thought that they should touch on the police encounters that black people have. And with this show, the first thing that they did was actually show that this thing is like the buzz in the background that is always there that you can sometimes unfortunately get used to, but it is still there constantly from the beginning of this season. It's a thing that is talked about, Justin's safety when he goes out at night, especially. And a it's not just an isolated incident in this series. And then when the time comes for there to be a type of encounter, he's not pulled over. We don't see the whole scene where the cop is walking up with his hand on his gun and like all the stuff that can happen and him being terrified. Like, all it is he sees the cop, they're behind him, the sirens go off, he pulls over, and then they ride by. And I think that scene being done in that way conveyed the same message that I think the other scenes in other television shows were trying to make, that like this is a scary moment, and it is a real moment that a lot of people go through every day, but it did not traumatize or re-traumatize any of the viewers, and also it didn't do that to the actor in the scene, which is something that I think we really have to think about when we're watching these shows and they're doing these scenes, is that this is a black man actor and this is a very real life thing that I'm sure he deals with, and now you're putting the actor in a scene where his character has to deal with something like this, and you want to take care of their mental health in that way. And I fully appreciate how this show handled that scene and this whole conversation. Now let's move on to the parents and the parenting. I think overall they're pretty much all, but especially the moms, really good examples of them wanting the best and trying to do no harm, but doing harm still in the process, even though they think that they're doing what they believe is best for their child, and they really do mean no harm, but they're causing harm at the same time. It's very complicated and it's very complex. Um, I want to start with talking about Dawn because there are a lot of people who feel like she is the villain of this season and that she did not do a good job parenting Justin, or that she was like his antagonist, someone who always like got in his way or blocked him from certain things. And I honestly don't agree with that. To each their own, but I feel like again, she tries to do no harm but ends up doing harm in the process. She's a very complicated woman, and I appreciate that portrayal of her because nobody is perfect, and sometimes you think you're doing what's best because that's what you know, but it might not always be what's actually best for the child that you're parenting at the time. And the main thing with Dawn is like, you see that she is a black woman raising not one but two black sons, and her firstborn is getting ready to go off to college. She's also very concerned and pretty much terrified of something happening to him because of an interaction that he has with the police, and wants to keep him safe at all times, and in doing so blocks him from doing things like go, going out on New Year's. You see that she's like, we just want to know the who, the when, the where, and all that kind of stuff. That's where that is stemming from. And then also that night when he wanted to leave to go comfort Keisha after she tells her mom about the sex tape, and she's like, no, it's dark, it's nighttime, you're not going to be safe, you need to stay here. Even though she told him earlier in the series that going to her house is something that he needs to do, and putting in an effort is something that he needs to do to be the man in this relationship. And then on the flip side of that, he is going away to school, and she wants him to be successful as an adult and out in the world as a grown up. And in her mind, the only way for him to get to that success is if he goes to a school like Northwestern, which is across the country, basically. And we see how these two things are in conflict with each other. Her wanting him to be successful, but also wanting him to be safe. She wants him to go to a school across the country. He's not going to be staying at home anymore. She's not going to have control over his whereabouts. And when he leaves, if he goes out at night, if he only goes out in the daytime, all of those things that she was trying to control while he was living in her house, she has no control over that if he goes away. And so his success and his safety for her are in constant conflict, and that is all of that stuff that she is dealing with on the inside. And you can see like it's a struggle for her. She's trying so hard to do both of these things, and because they're in constant conflict with each other, it's just rough. And it looks like she's an overbearing mom, or it looks like she doesn't want him to go out and do these things and be there for his girlfriend when she needs him. Also, with Dawn, I want to talk about how she handled finding out about Keisha's sex tape and just that whole situation, because it was very honest. With both moms, it was, and I'll get to Shelly in a minute, but with Dawn, it was extremely honest because, of course, the first thought in her mind is going to be her son and making sure that he is aware of the situation, making sure that he is handling it in a way that he's supposed to. And of course, that can come across as her not really caring about Keisha. But we see post that in another conversation that she has with Justin, that where she says she basically had to check herself and think about it and like, yeah, I'm gonna care for my son, but this is a black girl who is dealing with this on her own, and she needs support and she needs help and she needs to tell her mom. She didn't immediately call Shelly on the phone and tell her all of the business. She gave Keisha the opportunity to, but she also set a guideline and said if it doesn't happen by a certain time, I'm going to call her mom up. I'm going to call her up either way because I'm concerned, but I'm either going to tell her or I'm going to be there for her. And that's real. And I can appreciate her giving her the space to tell her, but also being like, you're not going to let this go any longer than it already has, and you need to tell her as soon as possible. Or as an adult who understands the gravity of this situation and how it can lead to like court and things like that, it's also a duty as an adult to tell the other adult about the situation, the other parent. And then she does end up making that phone call. She doesn't have to tell her about the incident, and she is there without judgment, just to give support, and then ends up giving resources to her as she suggests the therapist for her to go to. That whole phone call, I mean, it's like so awkward and so uncomfortable, and no one wants to have that conversation, but the whole point is, like she said herself, Dawn, that they all need to be Keisha's village, and it's not just the people that Keisha has with her mom and her cousins and her grandfather. Now she has all of these other people behind her willing to support her, but not just her, but her entire family. I just really appreciate how they showed Dawn through that entire situation. And now into Keisha's mom, Shelly. She also is a good example of meaning no harm, but also doing harm with just the environment that she raised Keisha in. Like Keisha said, the main goals were to get to Howard and to not get pregnant. And that's not bad per se. Graduating high school and getting to college, not being a teenage mother, there's nothing wrong with that. But like Shelly said in the show, that she ended up creating a space that wasn't safe for Keisha to come and talk to her about things like sex, which led to Keisha not telling her mother about the tape for such a long period of time. And Keisha assuming that her mother needs to see her in this amazing light and that she's like can do no wrong and that she can't be tarnished, but like she's telling her like, I haven't had sex with Christian, we didn't do that, you know, not in the sense that her mom thinks, but there's still this tape out there, and Keisha sees that as a blemish on who she is and not the like perfect image that her mom has of her in her mind that she needs to uphold. And then Shelly's reaction to the video was also really real and something that I appreciate because it wasn't perfect, but like I said earlier, no one is perfect. Of course, it's going to be shocking and like in a sense mind altering because you had this view of your child for so long and your child has led you to believe certain things about themselves, and now you're learning that it's all skewed and it's not what you think. It takes a minute to process the information, and sometimes the immediate reaction in those emotions are not what is needed at the time, and that's what we got with her. It sucks to see, and we know that that was the result of that was her hurting her child because of that reaction, but we still know that over her shift, she did a lot of thinking and a lot of researching and immediately wanted to protect Keisha in any way that she could think of in this situation. And that led to her possibly wanting to get a lawyer and go that route and things like that. And then moving into the conversation that she had with Justin's mom, just being open and accepting that and not cutting her off when she says something the wrong way, even though she didn't mean it that way, and has to apologize about it. She even says on the phone, like, this is a lot, but she doesn't hang up the phone. She doesn't cut her off. She doesn't get upset with her because she knew and because Dawn knew and she didn't. She just continues to stay on the line and listen to what she has to say, and then eventually they have a conversation and she accepts the support that Dawn is giving and hears her out when it comes to resources such as therapy, and then even seeks that out for herself, and then in the end comes back around to Keisha to have a real honest conversation about it and how to move forward, and offers remorse basically when she admits, like, even though it was like the therapist speak, when she admits about messing up with the environment that she raised her in and it not being a safe space for these types of conversations. And even when she's like talking to Keisha about how she continued to associate herself with Christian and go to prom with him, and she's like, I would never want you to torture yourself in that way. Like, it's continuing to show, like, I would have been there for you if you had told me. The reaction probably still would have been the same, to be honest. But again, she's showing that she is supporting her daughter and like still seeing her in a positive light, even though this thing has happened to her. And now on to the dads. Again, this show being about Black people and being the stories of them being told by Black people, very apparent with the dads, because they're both there for their children in their own way. Obviously, Quincy, Keisha's dad, is not physically present with her at all times, but he still is present in her life. They still communicate, they still have a relationship. He comes around and it's not just like, oh, it's your birthday and I haven't seen you since your last birthday. Oh, it's your graduation. Like, he's there and he wants to know about her and just continue to have an actual positive relationship with his daughter. Even though he's not in the same country, he's not there physically 100% of the time, he still wants to keep that connection with her and it be positive. And when they had that conversation after her graduation party, when he was talking about how he's like, I'm not there for you, I'm a deadbeat, and she's like, no, you're actually not a deadbeat, and he really isn't. I mean, it's he could have just gone off, chose his career, and you never see or hear from him again unless it's like a milestone, something that's happening in your life and it's weird. But you can tell that he's there for her and that he cares for her in his own way, which is not, like she said, he disrupts things. And that the way that he handled Justin and that whole thing was, it was uncalled for to happen in that way. But the questions that he was asking were actually valid. He didn't need to do it in front of everyone in a way that kind of low-key embarrassed him. But he wants to know about him because he is with his daughter. And he wants to know about how he sees himself and where he sees himself going in the future if he wants to continue in that relationship with his child. So, yeah, he's not around 100% of the time, but he is not portrayed as this deadbeat dad who you just all of a sudden see randomly because she graduated and he's there. Like, no, they have their own little thing where they send each other photos of the things that they've seen where they are, and they have their own type of relationship and their own bond. And then you have Eric, who on the surface, I guess, kind of seems like how he's always on his side and he's just there to, like, calm down Dawn and, like, let Justin be a teenager and be able to go out and do the things that he wants even though his mother doesn't want him to. But everything that he does, he really teaches Justin how to be a real man and how to treat a woman and how to respect a woman and how to care for a woman void of toxic masculinity, which I think is probably one of my favorite things about this show, is how void of toxic masculinity it is. I mean, the conversations that he has with him, whether he is going over how he should behave at the party, and the voiceover that we hear as Justin is walking into the home and he's basically talking to him about consent, to the conversation they have once Justin says that Keisha is his girlfriend, and it's not just him lecturing him about sex and telling him what to do, and you need to be safe, and so here, this is what you need. And he's like teaching him this like in like tactically, if you get what I mean. But he's not just lecturing him. He's kind of like putting him through the motions, letting him go through examples of what might happen if he's in the situation, and letting him see for himself. It's not going to be what you think, so I'm going to let you know that now, but I still want you to be careful. And then even when they were on Martha's Vineyard, and everyone knew pretty much that Keisha was there except for Justin, and Don didn't want anyone to know, but his dad told him, and he was like, she's here, she could be here for you, you haven't spoken to her. If she is here for you and you run into her, or she reaches out to you in any way, don't just write her off. Don't just push her to the side and say you don't want to have anything to do with her. At least hear her out, give her a chance to speak, because of the type of relationship that they had and the strong bonds that they had, their first loves, that he needed to do that. And he lets him feel his feelings and be emotional and be vulnerable. And he doesn't do the whole be a man, men can't cry, all of that stuff, you have to be strong, whatever. It's like, no, you can feel all of the emotions that you can feel. It's totally valid, it's totally okay, and you can just be, and it's fine. Like, that's another reason why this show is so good. And of course, we have to talk about Keisha and Justin, because they are our mains and the relationship of the show. First, I just want to say there was such an innocence with them that I can really appreciate with this being a teen drama. I think a lot of times with teen dramas I've seen plenty, and they're one of my favorite genres of television. So one of the things that happens a lot is that the teenagers, obviously they're being played by people who are adults, but even in the show as the characters, they seem very adult in a sense, as it's like they kind of walk around like they have it all together, and it's not even like it's a facade and like that's part of their storyline. They're really walking around like they're going into a 9 to 5 and dealing with like all of that kind of stuff and life, and it's like, no, you're just in high school, you're just going to school. A lot of times it just feels like the innocence isn't there, but it's actually something that they did a really good job of portraying in this show. Like all of the cutesy little things that they were doing, and like when they would look at each other and smile, or they like would text each other and all of that kind of stuff. It's like you can tell that there was a real sense of innocence with them. And I mean, they're supposed to be teenagers, and there should be. They shouldn't be acting like they're full grown adults in this moment. And even with like their sex scenes, like I think they're probably the most tame I've ever seen in a teen drama, at least a teen drama that has been on the air in like the mid to late 2010s into the 2020s. They were like super tame, especially for a Netflix show where like Bridgerton is also on Netflix. Like in comparison to that, like knowing that they are allowed to show certain things and do certain things, them not doing it and going the route of being tame, and knowing that the viewer understands what's going on and that we don't have to see body parts, we don't have to see certain motions and all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes shows do things because they can, and that's it. And that doesn't necessarily add to the story in any way. And I can appreciate this show that is on Netflix knowing that it can do that because of the platform that it's on, and still choosing not to. I think that's also one of the reasons why they were portrayed with innocence, because it didn't go into that direction. The other thing that I wanted to say is I really appreciated how Justin's flaws had nothing to do with him being toxic, nothing to do with him not knowing how to treat a woman or a young woman, and that they really kind of were the same in their issues and their flaws. Both of them were trying to be someone who they weren't. They were trying to be the person that they wanted their parents wanted them to be, and not who they wanted to be. I mean, with Justin and the whole basketball and going to Northwestern and probably going to the NBA and that whole dream, he didn't know at the time that that wasn't what he really wanted, And this whole season is just the process of him discovering that. And he needed Keisha in order to discover that for himself. And she was also trying to be the person that her mom wanted her to be by hiding this thing that happened in her life from her mother, and then acting like everything was okay in order for her to not like raise any eyebrows. Like she was walking around basically saying that she needed to be amazing because if her mom saw her as amazing, then her mom would be good too, which is a lot to bear. And she needed someone in her life to show her that this is a lot for you. You don't need to be doing this alone. You can tell her. She's going to still love you and be there for you as a mom. And that's who Justin was for her. So it's like they really needed each other in this very pivotal moment in their lives because they're making some very serious decisions about their futures. And even though Keisha was like, I'm gonna go to Howard and I'm gonna run track there, and like that was all set, she still needed to deal with the relationship that she had with her mom. And especially since like she's going off to school in a completely different state, like, and you're acting a certain way and putting on for your mom, but then on the flip side you're like, this is who I really am. You don't want to go away and like do things and have your mom think of you in a certain way, and then like just who you actually are and who her mom thought she was getting further and further away from each other. Like, no, because of that separation that they were, the physical separation that they were about to go through, they really needed to be strong in their relationship, and her mom actually be able to say like, yeah, you can talk to me about these things, especially as she's getting older, because you don't want her to go away to school and end up in a situation and she again feels like she can't tell her mom. Like they needed to strengthen that relationship before she went off to school. And then of course Justin needed to not be lost and figure out what he actually wanted to do with his life. And like he said in the show, it really wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for her, because of the events that led up to him finding the songs on his mom's old laptop. And so they both really needed each other in this time to help each other figure those things out about themselves. Another thing that I wanted to mention about Justin is how much I realized that he was like Keisha's dad in the being lost. And you kind of see that in the conversation that Keisha has with her dad when he's explaining about like what happened when he was a kid and how he basically, like he said, he used Keisha's mom as his prize because he was lost and he didn't know what to do with his life. And so he was like, well, I'm just going to make this person that I am in love with at this time like my prize. And in a result, it ended up with them having a child. And I noticed that that's basically Justin. And that's probably why her dad had such a strong reaction to him at that party, because he saw himself in this kid and he's like, I don't want him to end up like me. I don't want them to end up like me and her mom. And I think Keisha realized that too. And Justin realized it because he's like, you can't be the best thing for me. And that's why they ended up eventually breaking up, because even though they needed each other in that moment in their life to get to the point where they can be who they want to be and not be ashamed to do that around their parents, um, they also needed to separate in order for them to be themselves in the real world, which kind of sucks, but it had to happen. This is a teen drama. This is how it happens. Yeah, so that's where the story ends, with them graduated and embarking on their adult post high school lives. Now that we know that it's confirmed that they're getting a season 2, there are a lot of people who have thoughts and ideas about what the second season should be like, and I think there are two things that I would want to see in the second season. First, I think it could go probably like 2021, where it's like the tail end of lockdown when like everyone was obviously locked down, nothing was open except for like grocery stores and stuff. The tail end of that into when things started opening back up, because that's their, well, at least Keisha's first year of school. So it'll be the 2019 to 2020 year. And so, like, that was March of 2020. So, like, smack dab in the middle of her first year of college is when the pandemic takes place. And she probably won't be able to go home because she's someone who's living on campus, and because of where Howard is and where her home is, it would probably be too difficult and too risky at the time for her to fly home. And so I can see her locking down at school, and because things are opening back up and people are masking and things like that, maybe she then goes home to visit and to be around her mom, because she hasn't seen her in so long and couldn't, and the FaceTime and all that kind of stuff and the time zones probably are obviously mess everything up, and being able to go home and see her in person, and then her running into Justin, which is really interesting because he's like, technically he's taking a gap year and has a year to figure all of that stuff out, but it's like, no, like things are about to change. COVID is about to happen and it's about to jack up everything. So, with COVID and everything, Justin could be in a place where his music career is actually seeing some success and is kind of starting to really take off, and he's doing well. And then you have Keisha, who's coming home to visit because she can now, and the pandemic kind of like derailing her because she wanted to do track, and all that kind of stuff. So they would be very different, kind of like on a flip of where they were when they were in high school, where he is now steady in what he wants to do, and she might not be anymore because of the derailment of the pandemic. So that's one way where I could see it going. The other way, which is where I thought initially, is that they would wait until at least she has graduated from college. I don't know if he will end up going, because we know, like, he doesn't like school. He has ADHD. He doesn't want to be on meds. So schooling is difficult for him, which I didn't say anything about, but I do appreciate that they portrayed that in the show as well. But I think that that is a way to start season 2 as well. Also because of like the time jumps between them reuniting on the show, like they were in elementary school together and then they didn't reunite until halfway through their junior year into their senior years of high school. That is a huge jump. The 4 years of college isn't that big of a jump, but it still is a big jump, and we see them in a new era of their life and really walking into adulthood, if one of them or both of them are now graduating from college. So I see those two as a potential. Either one I would be fine with. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think they would start season 2? Well, I'm just gonna hope for the best for other seasons. This is Netflix. With the quickness of the renewal for the show, it wasn't even out for a week and it got renewed. So my hope is that this is something that continues, and that this show hopefully gets to tell the full story that it wants to tell and gets to end when it wants to end. I'm hoping that because the show is called Forever, that they do stay together forever and that the show does not end with them with other people. Because I won't be down for that. But that, I think, is all that I have to say on the show. Let me know what your thoughts are. Anything that you want to talk about, let me know in the comment section. We can have a conversation about it. If you've never watched any of my videos before, something that I've started to say is be civil or be blocked. We like a civilized comment section here. We do not tolerate, or I do not tolerate, any nonsense. And I'm not even gonna say anything to you about it. I'm just gonna block you and move on. So let's have a conversation in the comments about this wonderful show. Talk to me about how much you loved it. Talk to me about how you feel about the characters and the relationships and things like that. Talk to me about where you think they're headed with the season 2. and be civil or be blocked. But I'll catch y'all on the flip side because there are many more things that I will be talking about in the future. And you can also follow me on social media and across the internet. All of those things will be in the description below, to get immediate thoughts and reactions on all the things that I watch and read and all of that kind of stuff. So I will see y'all later. Bye.